Okay, let's quickly go through where we were. So, reviewing, I put in number one. Then this is prior plus one, prior plus one, prior plus one. Everything's the same. All of these formulas are the exact same. If these formulas basically say, if the override counts are greater than 0, then use the override count. If it's equal to 0 or less than 1, less than 0, then it's going to go to FinalCalc. Okay, we're going to look at FinalCalc in a second. All right. And we'll do, in subsequent videos, we'll look at how the conditional formatting works. Okay, so let's look at FinalCalc. We're going to go to Name Manager. So what is in FinalCalc? All right, this is one of the more complicated ones, but basically, it's saying if an error, then it's going to be 0, which is fine. It's going to take expenses valid month 10. Now, what does that mean? Let's just look at that first. Expenses valid month 10. So we can go to this formula, expenses valid month 10. All right. And it's expenses valid month 10 because the scope is limited to the expenses tab. There are a lot of advantages of limiting the scope to your tab versus the workbook. But I'm not going to get into that right now. Okay, so valid month 10, it really is my nomenclature to be 1 or 0, because it's either 1 or 0. If it falls within the date range, then it's 1. If it doesn't, it's 0. So let's just take a look at that. If the expense is month num, which we discussed before, month num, in this case it's in the J column. So J, and I'm in row 13, I happen to be in 13. But really J matters. So month num is J2, $2. Okay, so let's look at valid month 10. All right, so if the month is greater than or equal to A13, and again it's $A, because dollar is always going to be column A. Oh, I can't move over here. I'm going to just close that and move over. And we'll see A is start and B is end. Let's go back to this, and we're going to go to valid month 10. If it's greater than or equal to A, or, and it's less than or equal to B, then it's 1. Otherwise, it's 0. So if it's between and inclusive of A and B, then it's 1. Otherwise, it's 0. So now let's go back to the FinalCalc tab. So if you take that valid month, 10, and you multiply it times the rest of the calculation, so it's always going to be 0 if it's outside of the range. Then you do the first month 10. If it's the first month, again, if it's A, $A13. If month is $A13, then it's 1. Otherwise, it's 0. So if it's that number, if it's a 1, then you multiply it by the base amount, which is, now what's the base amount? Okay, the base amount is here. It's always going to be equal to $C13. So here is C13, and it's always going to be C13. All right, the base amount. So now, if it's the first month, it multiplies it by the base amount to get the initial amount, and then it's going to add to it the prior amount, which is coming. We discussed prior a few times already. The prior amount times 1 plus the interest rate. Okay, the interest rate is, monthly interest rate is what's in column D divided by 12. So D times 12. Okay, so you basically are just doing a standard formula, and you're going to take the base amount, and you're adding to it what was beforehand times the growth rate divided by 12. And then you have you have the FinalCalc, and that's really what that number represents. Now let's see if we could drill down a little bit with the tool here. All right, we saw that evaluate 0 is greater than 0 is false. So we're not going to be looking at the override amount in this case. We're looking at the FinalCalc. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to step into FinalCalc. We looked at this already. in the define, in the name manager screen, we looked at this, but we'll do it one at a time. So it's looking at valid month. So let's look at valid month. Valid month is 1. That means it's a valid month because it's between A and B. Now we're going to look at first month. Is it the first month? We'll see, evaluate first month. Yes, it is the first month. So now it's going to multiply it by the base amount. The base amount is 8,000. Okay. Now it's going to add to it. Oh, now it's going to multiply that out. That's 8,000. Now it's going to add the 8,000 to the prior month, which is going to be 0. Okay, that's 0. So whatever's going to be in here is going to be 0, but it's 1 plus the interest rate. Okay, if I evaluate it, it's going to come out to that. And if I keep on evaluating it, it's going to be 0. That's why we have 8,000. And the more I press evaluate, the more it's almost going to finish. Okay, fine. We're done with that. Now let's just take another look at this, and you'll see how the prior works a little differently. We go to evaluate formula, and we're going to evaluate. That's false, so we're going to look at FinalCalc. We're going to step in. We're going to evaluate, and we're going to see that it is the valid. Let's step out. Let me just do it again. Evaluate. Let's see. Now I got to do it again. Okay. Evaluate. And evaluate. And now step in. Okay. It's when it's underscored. So we can do an evaluate. This because it's a valid month. It's the first month. No, it's not going to be the first month. That's going to be a 0. It's not the first month, so we don't add the base amount again. So that's going to multiply to 0. 0. Okay. And now we're going to take the prior month and add to it. The prior month is 8,000. Okay, which makes sense. That's the prior month. And now we're going to do the interest rate again. And that's it. Done. So now I really explained how the whole thing works, but we're going to drill down a little bit further for advantages and also some of this conditional formatting, which is really nice. Okay. All right, so I'm going to do that in another video. Bye.